Our modern Western culture places little to no value on the power of our nightly dreams to inspire, shift, and reorganize our lives. This podcast demands a deep reconsideration of the role dreams play on our path to a more vital and meaningful life. The following is living proof of the life-affirming power of dreams to affect change and redirect the trajectory of our inner and outer lives. These are the dreams that shape us. When coincidences occur, are they merely a chance of probability? Did life come to be upon this planet due to a happy coincidence? Is that sufficient to you? I don't know if it is to me. So from the ecosystem down to the nervous system, just the luckiest of luck that somehow all these congruent, perfect little systems are in place, largely outside of any conscious need to aid them or perpetuate them. Or has everything come to be? And is our evolution continually inspired by these brilliant synchronicities? Is there some wildly intelligent creative force orchestrating all of this? Is this not so much a waking life as it is a waking dream? Synchronicity is defined by Carl Jung as a meaningful coincidence. Instances that aren't just defined by mere probability, that exponentiate probability to a level that cannot be merely explained away with the rational Western paradigm, because the way that these influences had to come together to present something in such a way that is perfectly and jaw-dropping meaningful to you in the way that everything just came together so perfectly. How? Well, our guest today, Bob Haas, author, dream teacher, and the IASD powerhouse that he is, shares with us a story of synchronicity that is quite possibly one of the most mind-boggling stories of synchronicity that I have ever heard. He has an impressive lucid dream that offers him insight that he struggles to know how to accept. And through his trepidation, a slew of synchronicities occur to help him truly accept what the dream was trying to say, and breaks him wide open to the deep mystery of our interconnectedness. One synchronicity goes as far as being a stranger emailing him out of the blue because she received a message from a Bob Haas in a dream. And I will say no more because, oh boy, you just wait. All I'll say is this story showcases the science, the power of synchronicity, and the magic and mystery of how deeply connected we all are. And you'll get to bear witness to how the man who literally wrote the book, The Science of Dreaming, receives a crash course in the mystery of dreaming. We hope you enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. I'm your co-host, J.M. DeBoard. You will be hearing from my co-host, Steve Ernenwein, later as he adds this commentary to our interview with Bob Haas. As Bob says, he has lived parallel lives. One of them was as a telecommunications executive. Very busy, high-powered sort of job with a lot of responsibility and long hours. And then we also had Bob, who is very interested in psychology and is trained in the Gestalt school, which comes down from Fritz Perls, who took Gestalt and added his unique methods and techniques to specifically engage with the dream in a way that was, and still is, revolutionary and can very quickly bring about deep healing within a person. So after Bob has gone through these two parallel lives, he also has become very involved in an organization which is close to the hearts of Stephen and I, which is the Association for the Study of Dreams, which is the world's largest academic organization for the study of dreams. And Bob is a past president of that. Now, one of the reasons why I want to give you this information is because Bob comes at dreams from the side of this is what the established facts are that we have learned through the study of dreams and what the science tells us. In fact, Bob wrote the book, The Science of Dreaming. So, we have with us the man who wrote the book on the science of dreaming. And this is important because Bob has now been taken over into what you might call the mystery of dreaming. This information is going to become important as we get into the interview because I want you to see that Bob has a background in the science of dreaming and the facts and the study of dreaming, but then he also has personal experience in the mystery of dreaming, and that's where we're going to begin today. So, Bob, I'm going to skip right into your dream. First, welcome to the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. Thank you for being our guest. You have a fascinating story to share, a dream that really has shaped you, and it has confirmed, it seems the way that I see it, it has confirmed for you that there is this mysterious side of dreaming that seemed to be calling you from the sort of sciencey academic side of dreaming over to find out more about the deeper mysteries in it. But as we are going to discuss in this interview, the mysteries really can have some scientific explanation in the theories of Carl Jung, the theories of quantum physics and quantum field theory. And so first, thank you for joining us. And
well,
Bob,
thank you.
Give us, I would like to start with Gestalt. You have training as a Gestalt therapist, and in fact, you have a method out there that is circulating on the internet where you put your own unique twist on it. Will you explain to us what Gestalt is?
Yeah, what Gestalt therapy is, or one aspect of it that Fritz Perls developed was rather than talking about what's going on, say either in a dream or in your life, he did something called role play, where you take a piece of, say, a dream, something in the dream. I usually like to use something that has drawn your attention in the dream. You could be the smallest thing in it as well. And you actually imagine yourself as that thing. You become it in his words. And allow it to express itself, because in a dream in particular, it represents stuff that you have not integrated within yourself. Because if you integrated it within yourself, it would not be out there in the dream. Okay, what's out there in the dream is the rest of you that you're dancing with and trying to integrate and deal with. So what he'd do is he would ask the person to become that thing or play that thing. It may have been a car or something in the dream. Play that thing, play the car, and allow it to express itself. And he would kind of do a dialogue with the thing in the dream, or the thing that the person has become, and to draw them down the rabbit hole, you might say, into what the impasse is. What is it? What's the conflict that they're dealing with? Why are they stuck in that place? Why can't they integrate with it? And what I did, I had the training for a number of years. I taught a course in dream psychology with a couple other psychologists that joined me. One of them was my Gestalt trainer, Herb Gadel. And he basically, it taught me the approach, which I could use in workshops. The trouble is, you go down the rabbit hole awfully quick. And you have to be a little intuitive to follow the person down there. But sometimes you can open doors you can't close unless you're, really a trained individual. And I'm not a therapist necessarily, although I do a lot of counseling, dream work, and whatnot. But I was an instructor, and so I wanted to find a way to instruct people in this process so they could use it themselves, but could use it without going so deeply that they open doors they can't close. So I developed what's called the 6 magic questions. It was actually called scripted Gestalt, but nobody could remember the 6 questions except one of my students in a place called Hayden Institute that I teach and train. It says, those are 6 magic questions because they go right to the heart of what's going on. So, and they're a pretty simple set. You become the thing in the dream, and you basically say, I am, let's say it's a car. I am, and I feel kind of strong, and I'm driving along very fast. What my purpose is to take you where you want to go. The third question is, what do you like about being this car? It's like, well, I like the fact that I can go fast and get there. What do you dislike about the car? Well, sometimes I go a little too fast and I break down. And then the like and the dislike gets into the conflict that you're stuck in. And then the last 2 questions is I fear and desire. That gets into the motivations that keep you stuck there. Because you get stuck in problems either because you're afraid of something's going to happen if you do it, or and you're also stuck in it because you desire to go someplace. So if you were the car, you might say, what I fear is that if I keep going so recklessly, I'm going to crash. What I really desire is to just take it on a nice smooth road and get there in a way that's safe. So in answering those questions, what happens is you get your conscious mind involved and your ego involved in playing a role of a car while your unconscious is actually making all those statements. So instantly what comes out is the unconscious conflict that's got you stuck somewhere and all the motivating factors around it. So what you do is after you've answered those questions, you either have the Dreamworker feed them back to you, or you read down what you wrote, and you say, "Does that sound like something that I felt lately in life?" And practically most of the people I work with this on say they all did, but usually 1 or 2 really stick out, and it allows you then to focus on what the dream was focusing on. Okay, so by turning Pearl's approach, which is a little bit more intuitive, into 6 magic questions, people can always ask these questions, answer them in 1 sentence without being dragged into a rabbit hole of opening doors that they can't close. So it's a safe approach for everyday dream work, and very effective. It has all the effect of getting to the core of the issue without going too deeply.
All right, I just wanted to slow this down for just a second, and he kind of burns right through what his 6 questions are. So if you're really intrigued by possibly utilizing this, here are the 6 questions verbatim. So you pick a symbol in the dream, like they've been using the car. So you would look at the car and you would ask yourself these 6 questions as if you are the car. And so to begin with, you basically answer, I am a car, and I feel, fill in the blank. How does it feel to be a car? What are the characteristics of being a car? Number 2, you are asking from the perspective of the car, what is my purpose? What is my function? So my purpose is to, and you fill in the blank. Question number 3 is, what do you like about what you are and what you do as the car? And so you would answer the question, I like blank, blank, blank. And number 4 is, what do you dislike about being the car? And you would answer, I dislike A, B, and C about being a car. And then question number 5 is, what do you fear the most as being the car? And you would answer, I fear blank as the car. And the 6th magic question is, what do you desire the most as the car? So as the car, I desire fill in the blank. And these 6 magic questions help you really get a lot closer to the deep root of what that symbol has to offer you. So If you want more information on this process, he has this really beautiful PDF, 2-page PDF, nice and short and easy, about the whole process and how you utilize this form for free on his website, which is www.dreamscience.org. All right, back to the show.
So Gestalt is allowing you to step back from the dream and to question the elements of it, to find out what it is that the unconscious mind, which is creating the dream with you, it's presenting the content, this emergent content from the unconscious. It comes up and you interact with it as basically an egoic being that steps into the dream, and you interact with this content. And what Gestalt is helping you to do is understand why it's there in the first place, because the unconscious has an agenda. It wants to bring something to your attention because it sees that there's something, an area where you could grow, something that is blocking your growth, a place where you are hurt, where you are afraid, a place where you desire something but you're not sure how to get it, a place where you have a decision to make and you need the information that's going to help you to make that decision. So what you do is you interact with the dream, is put the car there in your dream. And you might look at a dream like that and say, well, yeah, I was driving in a car. And, you know, you look at the point A where you were when you got into the car and the point B where you arrive when you're done. And maybe point A and B are what are standing out to you and what you're focusing on. But what the dream is really trying to tell you is that the car itself had more importance, and it would be easy to overlook.
Stuff.
So what you do is
it's what it is. What it is, most dream work is people stay in their heads, in the conscious mind, and that part was asleep during the dream. So to talk about the dream, is a great way to start. But don't stay there, because that part was asleep at the time. That part of that brain that is rational and thinking and talking was asleep. So you got to go to where the part of the brain basically that was actually dreaming. And so I call it's letting the dream speak, letting the thing in the dream speak rather than you trying to guess at what it was. Just let it speak. And it's as simple as those 6 questions.
And everything in a dream is an aspect of yourself it's being given form, drawing from your memory of things like like a car.
Absolutely.
A car, for example, could symbolize your drive, because you have drive is motivation and you drive a car. So there could be something that the car symbolizes related to that idea of drive. But since you also control a car, because if you're the one behind the steering wheel, and you have your foot on the pedals, you control the brakes, the accelerator. So that idea of control can carry over. The dream can use a car to symbolize that idea. And it could be like, well, you're not in control of the car. Can you relate that to something else in your life that's out of control? And a person goes, well, my pulse has been out of control, or my emotions have been out of control. There's a situation in my life that's out of control.
Yeah. So here's the difference, though, in those 2 approaches.
Yes.
The approach that you showed, you're using the most basic approach to dream work, which is metaphor. Okay. But then you start guessing at what those metaphors are. If you just let the car speak, it tells you what it is.
What it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, it had nothing to do with control. The case I just in this case, it had to do with being out of control, going too fast, and a fear. So that's why I like to, I love the metaphor work, because it gives you some ideas, but you got to get away from it quickly and just let the thing in the dream speak. Otherwise, you get drugged down the. Now the institute I teach projection dream work too, but I like to get away from it very quickly, because although group projection gets the whole group involved in the dream and things like that, and it can be very helpful, it doesn't get at the heart of the dream. To get at the heart of the dream, you gotta let the elements speak.
Yeah.
And it takes you down a whole different path.
And just to mention this, I discovered this recently with natural dream work from Roger Kamenetz. And I found that there was a whole different way of approaching the dream through finding the basically the feeling and emotion related words that are used in the description when you describe the dream. And you find that and you start to tease it out like a poet would, like the way that a poet, I'm looking out my window right now here in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm looking at the Catalina Mountains. At the very edge of the mountains are visible outside of my window. I can sit here for an hour and not be able to come up with the words that would describe exactly what it is that I'm seeing, because there's a subjective experience of it that's hard to describe. But in the dream, everything, the dream and the way that you describe it can give you that, it can put things into words in a way that come from the deepest inner part of you. And if you listen to that deep part of yourself and use a method for drawing it out, like Gestalt or natural dream work, then you very quickly can get around all of the techniques of analysis and interpretation. And instead, you're getting right to what you might call, what is the subjective experience of the dream, which is me as a conscious being who is experiencing this thing, because a dream is an experience. I've had an experience as a conscious being, but without the rational side of me in the dream. As you were mentioning earlier, when you go into a dream, you're bringing everything about you as an egoic being except for your rationality. So you're walking into this place and you're having an experience of consciousness, basically. And you've actually touched on the heart of the science behind dreaming as well. When we dream, in particularly the REM state of dreaming, which is where we pull up our more emotional, vivid dreams. That stage of sleep is when the conscious and rational part of the mind, the prefrontal cortex and all, basically shuts down. So there's no rationality or cognitive kind of thinking going on in the dream. What the part of the brain that actually activates highly is the limbic system and the paralimbic systems in the frontal part that are around it. They are processing emotions. And so it is the emotional aspect of dreams. In order to understand what the dream is talking about, you got to get into what the dream is actually processing, which is not the event itself that occurred to you. What it's processing is your emotional response and emotional perspective of the event. Yep. And so that's why what you say is when you're like looking at the Catalina Mountains, the emotions are coming through, and it's somewhat unconscious because you can't really describe it very well, right? But it's being processed at that level. And that's what dreams are. They're processing your emotional perspective of an event in waking life and your emotional reaction to it, and trying to relate it to how you reacted similar things in the past. For some of the people consider it an evolutionary purpose, for the purpose of helping you adapt to the next day's life, for the purpose of helping you adapt to life, so you don't react to everything. You've calmed yourself down. Most of us experience that. We go to bed really mad at something or upset by something. Wake up in the morning with a very different feeling, and that's because the dream has helped us to calm down and deal with that situation emotionally, and stored that learning so that from then on we don't react so much to the same kind of situation. And you've learned how to deal with those emotions better because you've processed them in the dream, even though the dream is presenting it as this narrative that has a lot of visual metaphors and stuff. What it's really trying to do is get to the heart of your subjective experience of life, which is the mental is part of it, but it's really, we are emotional beings. If you look underneath the prefrontal cortex, where all the advanced intellectual functioning of the brain happens, if you look beneath it, what you have is the limbic system, which is really the emotional brain. So at the core of us, or at least beneath all of the fancy intellectual exterior of us as beings, what you have in the core of us is an emotional being. And we can see from dreaming that that's what its priority is. Because right. if you don't, now one of the things that we can tell of the reason why dreams are so related to emotions, one reason is because we can look into the brain and see that the limbic system is firing, and we know the limbic system is very associated with emotions. But the other side of it is that if you go without sleep for a while, look at what happens to your emotional state. 24 hours
Right.
or so of sleeplessness, and which is really dreamlessness, and you have all those emotions stuffed up inside of you. And the longer you go without sleeping and dreaming at that point, the more out of whack that you're getting emotionally. So we can look at that and say, well, dreaming must be very important for emotional processing, because if you don't dream, your emotions start to get out of whack. And the longer you go, the
Right.
more out of whack that they get.
What's actually happening in the dream, it's kind of a 4-stage process. Jung talked about it. He said dreams have a purposeful structure. And lately, though, most folks that study the mental processes, particularly memory processes and memory reconsolidation in dreams, have also found the same sort of process. And the way it happens is it starts out with basically the frontal cortex, the parts of your brain that remember the event itself, that really stays asleep. And the limbic system activates, basically brings in the emotional perspective and the emotional memory of the event. And it does what's called a triage. It picks the parts that it's ready to deal with, that it can deal with right now.
Yeah.
And so it presents the first part of the dream. It presents your perspective of the situation, your emotional perspective. So it end up you're kind of wandering through this thing, sort of lost, whatever. And then it goes back and it looks at all your past memories. It deals with the collective unconscious to understand who you really are. And then it presents possible solutions to your problem. In PTSD dreams, it may present it as mastering the situation. But in most of our dreams, it's presented as some sort of guiding thing. Either a surprise event occurs, the dream will drag you into a decision point. Okay, now you understand the situation. Let's make a decision of whether we go this way or that way. And basically, the dream drags you through its own unconscious solution. And that's what most of the dream is, dragging you through this stuff. And you as the ego in the dream are making decisions whether you're going to go that way or not. And if indeed the ego and the unconscious finally agree, and the ego decides to make a switch, a decision, a change, the dream will reward that with a positive sort of ending or positive direction. Now, the rewarding isn't just to say nice guy. The rewarding is actually in order to store that emotional solution in the hippocampus, for example. It stores that solution. At the end of the hippocampus, of course, is the amygdala, which is your emotional response mechanism. So by rewarding that mechanism with, oh, this was the right solution, it gets stored. And it's called memory reconsolidation of the emotional memory of the situation. Then the rewarding of that will actually change the perspective that the person had and store that new perspective in long-term memory. So when you wake up, you may not have remembered the dream. You may not have even understood it. Most of the time you don't understand it. But the change has occurred, and that's what's important.
So I think what we're establishing here, a baseline that you know the science of dreaming. You understand how it works in the brain. You know the techniques that help people to get into their dreams, to find where the new perspective or the healing or the decision making, the problem solving, where that is occurring in the dream, and then how they can bring that into their own lives and make it a bigger part of themselves, or a more permanent part. It seems like the dream is already helping you to do that by overriding the old memories and giving you the positive reinforcement for the new memories to really stick. So a lot of what's happening while you're dreaming is this memory processing and consolidation, where you take your daily experience of life. For one, you kind of help to clear the memory banks, you help to clear out the emotions. You take what's most important in your daily experience of life, and dreams help you to sort it all and figure out where it fits into the existing structure of who and what you are. So this is very well established in the science of dreaming, and you can ask most people, whether psychologists or other scientific types who study dreams, and they'll say, yeah, we can pretty much agree that that's what's happening as you're dreaming. But Bob, you had an experience of a dream that got you outside of that zone. And what happened to you opened you up to the possibility that there are layers to dreaming that are deeper than what we're talking about here. And it made you very interested in finding out what it is that's at that deeper level of the dream. Now, what I'm referring to is the dream where you met the four parts of yourself, and you were kind of at a crossroads in your life and in your understanding with these experiences that you described as visions, and this visionary part of your life. So if now I want to make the transition into that with our listeners knowing that Bob Haas knows the rational materialist side of dreaming. He knows he's been through the body of knowledge, the literature on the subject, the science on the subject. He teaches this stuff. And now he's having a dream that is introducing him to something that maybe before he wasn't as personally aware of as he is of it now. So Bob, can you pick up there and tell us about the dream that you had and any information that will help the listeners understand where you were at as a person leading up to that moment in time when you had this amazing encounter in your dreams?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is based on a principle that Jung talked about of synchronicity. He called it meaningful coincidence. And although, it's all in Jung's literature, and you can read about it, it had to do also with his break with Freud. They were arguing about metaphysical aspects of life and dreams and things like that. And Freud said, that's crazy. And all of a sudden, Jung felt heat in his chest. And there was a loud boom in the cabinet behind him. And they both looked. And Jung said, that's an example of the synchronicity. And he considered it to occur at points when there's a break, a transition, or he called it transcendent moments in your life.
Freud didn't believe him, and he reproduced it. Freud said, that was just a coincidence, and then it happened again, and Freud was still like, it must be coincidence, and Jung's like, no, I'm producing this because of the tension between us is now manifesting as this loud cracking sound in the office. So let me just throw that in, and you pick up from there, Bob. Yeah,
well, what he said, and of course Freud didn't believe him. And he said, well, here, Professor, you're wrong. It's going to happen again. And it did. And that was the beginning of their break. They never spoke about it again. But that was part of why they broke. And you can read the story and say, well, that's kind of neat. But when it happens to you, it gets pretty wild. So, this is essentially what happened to me. I was at a point in my life where I was in the middle of finishing one book. It's called Dreams That Change Our Lives. And it contains about 20 authors from the IASD, International Association for the Study of Dreams. And so trying to herd the cats to build this book was bad enough. And I was only about halfway through it when I was invited to do another very large book, which is a 2-volume book on dreams, understanding the psychology, biology, and culture associated with dreams. And it ended up having 70 authors, half of them researchers, et cetera. So it was going to be a huge effort right on top of the first effort. And I said to myself, well, geez, I can't keep doing this. And I decided that, I was under too much pressure and stress. I'm going to stop doing this. I turned down the editoring of the other book. And I actually decided this is the point which I've got to quit pursuing my visions, because it's all based on visions. You don't get much of an ego out of writing books or money either. So it was a purely exercise, and this ought to be done. And I said, no more. I doubted whether my visions were of any real value anyway. And I said, no more. I'm going to quit this whole DreamWorks stuff. at least the part related to writing books and all that kind of jazz. Well, my unconscious had a very different idea. And that night I had a dream, and I realized I was dreaming, so it turned lucid. And what happens when I get a lucid dream, instead of flying around and having fun or doing whatever, I always realize there's a wisdom behind the dream. Jung called it the collective unconscious. You might call it spiritual wisdom, whatever you want to call it. But there's a wisdom there that's actually watching and helping you through the dream. And so I turned to the wisdom. I said, show me something I need to know. And at that moment, the dream sparkled into a new lucid dream, where I was introduced to the 4 parts of myself that were in conflict over whether I should give up my visions or not. The first, it was actually interesting. One of the Mario brothers was the guide that was guiding me through this thing. But he had introduced me to this really tall blonde guy. He says, I'm your fun, and the tall blonde guy says, I am your fun-loving side. Side just wants to go out and have fun, not do all this work.
Yeah.
Then I was introduced to a frustrated artist, and he was trying to make this sun sculpture. And he says, I just want it done without putting in all the work. That was obviously me. And then a thinking machine that said, I am your wise and learned self, your past and future, which I will and when I said, well, if you're my future, what's going to become of me? And he says, I will reveal that to you after the 13th dream. And I said, what? You can't count 13 dreams because you don't even remember that many. But anyway, it sounded very profound, but I didn't know what it meant. So finally, the 4th person. Now, these people were parts of my personality that were involved in the conflict. And this is the classic function of dreaming. It basically shows you the situation you're in. So there's nothing mysterious so far. But this beautiful woman was running by where I was sitting. And I said, stop. I said, what part of myself are you? She said, I can't stop. I got to get off to this meeting. I got to do this stuff. I said, no. And so I grabbed her and stuttered in front of me. And I said, what part of myself are you? And I said, who are you? And she said, I am your visions. I am like diamonds. So at that moment in the dream, I sort of forced myself awake because I seemed to have gotten my guidance. The personal guidance here seemed very clear. The dream was telling me, no, your visions aren't something that you can just abandon. They are like diamonds. So I thought, well, okay, I got my answer. But it turns out there was a much deeper wisdom at work. And this was a moment of, to me, a moment of transcendence and real change that I hadn't fully realized at this point in time. And as Jung said, it's at those moments that our mind reaches out into reality and creates these meaningful coincidences. So anyway, the dream was, the 2 characters in the dream that were important was the woman who said, I'm your visions, I like diamonds, and the mysterious statement is, I'm your past and future, which I'll reveal after the 13th
dream. Yes.
So I was more curious. I knew what the diamonds were all about, but I was curious about the 13. So we had a cyber conference going on, IASD get online, and which everybody was talking about psi and dreaming. And so I was a speaker in it, and I brought the whole thing I said, okay, group, tell me your ideas on the number 13. So I had played with the archetypal and the numerical, and nothing fit. And this one woman said, of all the things that came back, it was the one that was the scariest. She says, 13 in tarot is the death card. And I'm going, oh my God, because that can have 2 meanings. One of them, and I said, that's pretty scary. Does this mean that if I keep this up, I'm going to have a heart attack and die or something? Because that was my first thought. She said, no. She said the 13 tarot, the death card, is actually a positive representing transformation. And I said, yeah, I kind of know that, but I certainly don't want to go pick it out of the tarot deck and find it's upside down. So I guess
the negative aspect of it is when in the tarot you have, if it's the card is upright, then it's the positive aspect.
Yeah, right.
If the card is upside down, it means that it's saying that you're manifesting or the negative
Right,
aspect
yeah.
of it. So yeah, you don't want the death card upside down because
I was curious enough. I went to go look for the tarot deck, and I said I couldn't find it. I said, no, I'm not going to mess with this. This is too scary. I'm going to stick with the positive. So I ignored, the whole 13 death card thing because I was scared that it was just having to do with me having a heart attack by doing all this work. But the unconscious had different ideas. The next morning, I get an email from a person that I've never heard of before. She says, I don't know you, but I Googled your name based on a dream I had where you gave me a call. She said, and when I Googled you, your name came up first. And she said, I saw you worked with dreams. So I thought you might be interested in the dream I had. She says, in the dream, I got a call from a Bob Haas. I said the spelling was kind of weird on the last name. It had AZ on it. Of course, I live in Arizona. So very, very specific, Bob Haas AZ. Uh-huh. And he says, I got a call from Bob Haas on the Body Unconscious Network. Now, that's cool. And Bob Haas told me, when you draw a card that is usually considered to be negative, in this case, it should be considered positive because of where you are and where you've been. So it made the hair stand up on my neck.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same statement the woman had given me the night before in the cyber conference, that the death card is actually positive. Exact same message from a person I didn't know. It was as if I was calling myself through this other woman to tell me, no, it is a positive. So I thought that was really interesting. So then I said, I'm going to have to go find my tarot deck and figure out what's going to happen. So I dug around and I finally found it. And I shuffled it and I shuffled it absolutely. After this synchronicity, saying, I know that the death card is going to come up. Right, either upside down or right side up. So I shuffled and shuffled and shuffled. The Queen of Cups came up. And I said, oh, crap. That's so much for the synchronicity. And so I said, but no, I'm going to do it again. So I shuffled and shuffled it again, which you really shouldn't do as tarot. But anyway, I did it. Shuffled and shuffled it again. The Queen of Cups came up twice in a row. And I said, uh-oh, there is something going on here. And so I said, I better get the little book out and see what the Queen of Cups means in this tarot deck. And I got the book out and I looked for the meaning, and it said, the Queen of Cups, a gift of vision. So here it had gone full circle to the lady in the dream that said, I'm your visions, I'm like diamonds. I'm going, oh my gosh, a double synchronicity here. And I said, well, I'm going to have to, I know I'm going to present that at some presentation in the future. I said, I've got to find an image that looked like the woman in my dream, so I can put it on my PowerPoint slide. And so I Googled beautiful woman with sparkles and black hair, because in the dream she had all these sparkles around her. I thought they were just the diamonds. But I actually, after about 2 to 3 pages, I found the exact woman. And how I knew that, and not only I looked at it, the view, but my heart started pounding, which was the same way it pounded in the dream itself. Yep. So it was like, my God, I found the exact woman. So, but there was no artist name to credit. It was just the image. I thought, well, I do want to credit the artist. So I said, well, maybe if I click on the link address, under the card, under the image, it will tell me who the artist was. So I clicked on the link address, and what it said was the Tarot Project Queen of Cups.
Oh, no kidding.
So here was these 4 synchronicities in a row, full circle. And I mean, that was scary, actually, because I have had a couple synchronicities in my life, but they're, peripheral. This was just beyond belief, that I get this email from nobody and somebody I didn't know. I mean, that said the exact same thing to me that the woman said the day before. I get the woman in the dream who is the queen of, in the tarot card, the Queen of Cups that related to the gift of visions. And then finally, the picture of this person that I found in the dream in Google that matched. And she represented the Tarot Project Queen of Cups. It was just, absolutely astounding.
Now, Bob, if you don't mind, I want to play devil's advocate. I can imagine if you presented this to certain audiences that do not have the background in dreams and synchronicities and stuff, and you said, well, this is my evidence, that they could say like, well, the drawing the card out of the deck, let's work out the odds. And I did it in my head real quick. It's about 1 in 2,700 chance that you would draw the Queen of Cups twice. Mm-hmm. Right. That you would find the woman with the sparkly diamond hair, that you would find it through a Google image search or whatever search engine you're using. You do an image search. Now, they could say that, well, the image that you found was probably close enough to your dream that your memory made the connection. This is a theory behind the reason for deja vu is that something is close enough to an existing memory that your brain automatically it makes the connection even though it may not be perfectly accurate. So the woman was close enough. Now, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I've been through this and I know how it is. And, you have that confirmation in your own body when it responds to something that is meaningful, and that the outer world is responding to your inner world. But there are people out there who would look at this and say, these things could happen through its extraordinary coincidence, but if we work out the odds, then it's about the same as, let's say, getting Delta Royal Flush. And that happens. I've been to Vegas. I've been Delta Royal Flush. Well, I got it on the draw. But, and the odds are like 1 in 46,000. Okay, well, every once in a while, these extraordinary things happen. But the part of it that I think is you cannot find a rational explanation within the materialist paradigm is the fact that some person out of the blue has a dream where Bob Haas, AZ, knocks on her dream door and gives her the information that you were struggling with about the visions and your visions for what you want to accomplish and the things that you want to do. And you're struggling at that time with, is this really worth doing? And some person out of the blue has a dream, remembers your name from it, looks you up on the internet, and then sends you an email saying, I got to share this dream with you because I think you were in it. That part of it, to me, is the part that if you want to try to come up with a rational explanation for how that could happen, then go ahead and try all you want to. But to me, that's the part of it that can't be explained even through they come up with explanations for psi functioning, which psi, by the way, is psychic functioning. It's ESP, telekinesis, telepathy, precognition. It's a whole bunch of different abilities, clairvoyance, and we lump it together under psi because we want this to be the scientific study of this and not just, what somebody, it's a term that we use so that we can distinguish that we're studying a phenomenon that has been recognized and that we want to understand how it works. You could say in some psi functioning that it's actually some kind of projection from the person who's having an experience inside of themselves and it's manifesting in the outer world. So ghosts show up in someone's house. It's not a spirit from the beyond. It's a projection from the inner world of this person. But Bob, the thing is what your experience, what you had involved another person and their voluntary actions. They had a dream. You couldn't give them the dream. They had a dream with you in them. And no matter how hard you try, I have not heard anyone who says that they can project their dream into someone else's dreamscape. So as far as we know, there's no way that you could have given this person this dream. You didn't know them at all, so you had no chance of influencing them, putting information out there that maybe she picked up on, and that's how that's how her dream content was influenced by you. And then she had to make a voluntary decision to look you up on the internet and send you an email that to most people would sound kind of crazy. You heard me. I would start wondering whether this was a fishing expedition, as in like an internet scam fishing expedition,
The other thing you have to look at is that was just one element. And you could say, sure, you can basically shuffle cards and one in whatever it was, 20,000 chance of having the same card. But you got to remember what Jung said about this stuff. It's meaningful coincidence.
Yeah.
We got the Queen of Cups twice. And when I went to look for the meaning, the Queen of Cups gift of vision. It was all about what the same woman I found on the internet had said in my dreams. That's a double. It's not just the chances of, you shuffling cards, which has a finite chance to it.
Yeah.
But it was also that it related meaningfully to the situation I was dealing with in my dream, which was visions. That, to me, was an even just as striking as this woman, calling me up on her email that, you always have curiosity. Well, did she find out something? And
does she know something about you? And she was able to pull
she wasn't part of
or something?
The cyber conference was closed, so she wasn't part of that. But, who knows? And there was more to what she saw in the call that was even more amazing. But
the body unconscious was one that I was curious about, So when we look at this as, let's call it the preponderance of the evidence, it's when we put this all together, it is beyond it's beyond extraordinary coincidence, because these factors lined up. And one thing that we haven't mentioned or re-mentioned is the fact that you went to bed that night with this problem on your mind. Mm-hmm. You were making a decision, and you were leaning against continuing forward with pursuing the vision in the sense of pursuing the books, that you have a vision.
In fact, I had turned down the second the big 2-volume book.
So you're kind of retreating at this point and away from this stuff, because there's so much work that's required. And I know as an author what a labor of love it is, and a huge commitment of time to whether you're editing a book or you're writing it yourself. The time commitment is just extraordinary. And so you then go to bed with this on your mind. You have a dream that turns lucid, and you're able to engage with these 4 aspects of your personality that are related to this issue. I think it's funny that your fun-loving side was there. Because I got that part of me too. He would probably show up with a guitar in his hand, and he would say, "Dude, let's go party." That's what I want to be doing with my evenings, rather than working all day and then go work all night on whatever vision that I have for a project that I want to get out there. So when you put all of this together, Bob, there's it's beyond extraordinary coincidence, and that subjectively, because of your reaction to this, you inside of yourself, you did backflips, because you realized, like when you drew that card the second time and you went, no way. And then you go and you look up what the card means in that tarot deck, and it says Queen of Cups, related to visions. And you're like, okay, this is getting way too, there is something that is speaking to me. And that's where I want to pick up. Bob, what was speaking to you? Were you projecting all of this out there so that you could interact with it, and somehow through maybe a psi ability of your own, you were reaching out and contacting people out in the world who would get a hold of you? You were somehow influencing how those cards were going to fall out of that deck? You were somehow making all this happen? Or was there something greater that was involved in this? Like you talked about the intelligence behind the dream that's always there observing. What was reaching out to you? Because something obviously was that's beyond normal.
There's a number of theories behind what this is. I mean, Jung was the one that sort of defined the nature of the psyche as having what he called the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious to him was this part of our unconscious mind that not only has all of our experiences in it from our entire life, but also all the experiences from our genetic life in the past, et cetera.
All people who've ever lived.
Exactly, and it connects at a psychic level, one might say, with all of creation, with the cosmos, etc.
It's like a database that we're accessing, and it's unconscious, so it usually happens through dreams. But if you want to use an analogy, it's the database, and dreaming opens up the internet connection so that you can search the database.
Yeah, that dreams can, your own psychic abilities can, etc. But that was Jung's theory about it. The scientific theories deal with the fact that at some level we are all just conscious energy with our molecules and electrons are just matter popping in and out of existence. But that's those are two. You can approach this any way you want to, but the idea is that we are more. And I also I'm presenting and did a big study on near-death experiences, and some of the medical profession that looked at people who have crossed over to the other side and come back, and with even they were brain dead basically. Some of them had no blood in their brains because they were going through an aneurysm thing. So there was no brain function, yet they experienced these fabulous things. And one of the basic conclusions that they made from this, the one is Bruce Grayson from the University of Arizona. University of Virginia. Basically said clear sensory complex and perceptual processes during a period of apparent clinical death challenges the concept that consciousness is localized exclusively in the brain. And that is the most common conclusion made from these sorts of experiences that seem to be totally outside of the realm of our physical self. So what's really happening here, and I think the way that Jung stated it was best. These psychic experiences occur, these coincidences occur, but they're for a meaningful reason. So if you look at my dream, and go back to what I said about one of the primary purposes of dreaming is to try to take your emotional reaction to life, which may be inappropriate, which may not be healthy, etc., and try to change that. Now, normally the brain just kind of does that based on what we've experienced in life and things like that, and said, no, you're fine. But when it becomes something that interferes with what Jung called the self, the idea that there is a model of who you can become within, there's a model of your own strength within the collective unconscious, then the collective unconscious will manifest itself in the external world to basically continue the dream into the external world. And that's what happened here. This was the dream that I was having was going around its normal process of here's the parts of yourself that are in conflict. That's what dreams normally do at night. They show you all the parts. They show you the part that you are the ego. They show you all the parts out there that you haven't dealt with.
It's very gestalt because and you're experiencing a dream that you're very familiar with the basic premise of it. You're having a gestalt type of dream and seeing all the parts of yourself.
And then what happens is because this was according to Jung, such a transition for myself, it was like him breaking with Freud. The collective unconscious, and because of the fact that I was ignoring it, I was going to say, no, I don't want to look at this death card. That's too scary. The collective unconscious says, oh, no, you're not. We're going to continue this dream in waking life. And that's when it created all these synchronicities. It came through another person's dream. My own unconscious came through another person's dream psychology, in such a way that they were incented to look me up and give me the meaning. And then the words were exactly what I've been told. So it was like, no, you ain't going to die. That's not what this means. This means you're in a transformation. And okay. And even that was scary enough that I went and shuffled the cards because I still didn't totally believe what was going to happen and got a completely different answer. And that was the surprise aspect. Same thing that happens in a normal dream, only now it was happening in waking life.
All right, so I've been trying to find a good spot to interject in here to really have us take a moment to sit with the fact that he does have this intense reaction to the death card and to the idea of death. And even as he hears that it's positive and is an act of transformation, it still is terrifying for him to want to accept this. And I want to believe, I may be putting words in his mouth right now, but I want to believe that you're looking at a man who has been so enmeshed in the scientific paradigm of dreaming. And now there is this confluence of mysterious forces that are synchronistically bombarding him to help him have this massive shift in his own personal paradigm. One that is now moving forward, going to encapsulate both the scientific, logical, kind of straightforward mentality, but also interweaving this gorgeous, mysterious, synchronistic, magical aspect of life and of dreaming. And the two are merging as one. And there's no doubt in my mind that this, from his standpoint and how he has approached dreams up to this point, this is kind of earth-shattering. This is transformation. This isn't just some passing thing. You see all of these things that are converging on him to have this massive death of how he has looked at dreams and how he has operated with dreams. This is changing everything. This is shattering a whole way of relating to dreams. And yes, it is terrifying. It butts you up against this great unknown. He is being forced to recognize that there are forces in this life that are beyond him, that are squaring up with him and are like, no, you have to look at this. You have to recognize what is happening here so that you can move forward and you can see that there is so much more to this picture. So I think this is beautiful. This is such an amazing story of just how these forces within us and how they stretch into this world and they mirror everything back to us that we need to see. And there's just this benevolence, this beauty, and this truly mysterious magic in this world that is constantly trying to shape our lives in such a beautiful way.
So there's this psychic side to all of us, a spiritual side, some people like to call it, that transitions well beyond the physical body, or Bruce Grayson and many other cardiologists and all have said, that mind extends beyond just the physical brain. And in extending beyond the physical brain and touching the rest of creation and touching the cosmos and touching others, it continues the dream into waking life.
Wow. And what a way of thinking of it. The dream continues when you have a synchronicity. It's the continuation of the dream. So now the outer world is responding to your inner world. But maybe the trying to differentiate outer and inner and making a hard boundary saying, well, this is what's within me and this is what's outside of me. And they are two very different things. They have no relationship to each other other than my physical interaction with my environment. And your experience as well, guess what? You're actually part of what appears to be some kind of a field of consciousness that we all are, including matter as part of it. This was something, and I want to mention this about Jung. A lot of people don't know that he developed the theory of synchronicity along with Wolfgang Pauli, who was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and that they went back and forth for 20 years working on synchronicity and trying to really hone in on what is this? They'd made observations, and they wanted to know from the physics side of it how it worked, how from the material side of it. And what Jung eventually concluded is that the psyche and the world of matter are two ends of a spectrum that are the same. And what he said is that when you go to the bottom of the psyche, the very deepest part of the mind, and you keep going, you end up in the physical world. So what he was saying is that the mind itself is connected through consciousness to the physical world, and that they are one and the same. They are a spectrum. Mind and matter are the same. So when you look at it that way, the way that your mind, in your experience, through your dreams, and the transcendent moment in your life that you were in, and the resistance that you were giving to the message that seemed to be coming to you, so that now the dream has to reach out into the physical world. Your mind has to reach out to bring something in that says, Bob, we're not kidding here. We're trying to help you to answer your question and solve, the conundrum that you're in, this personal situation where you feel like giving up on something that had been very important to you to this point. So it reached out into the physical world to be able to give you something that would get your attention and help to shape your mind around what it was that you were struggling with and give you the information that you needed. So
right.
Your synchronicity is part of synchronicity isn't just it's meaningful coincidence, but what we're looking at is there's a mechanism for this to happen.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it's identical to the mechanism that your dreams every night do. Remember, I said they basically put you in the situation you're in. They picture it, and they try to provide a resolution to the situation, and in the end, award that resolution if you have followed it, or at least reward the unconscious's version of what you should follow. They give you an example, and so that you actually change, and that's exactly what happened here. But it was the absolute process that would occur within a normal dream. But because I stopped the dream and ignored it, my unconscious says, no, we're going to keep going. It continued the dream into waking life. And I think what you said earlier was pretty good about how mind extends beyond. And there is really a scientific principle behind that, and it's based on quantum physics. The fact that if you were to shrink yourself down, if you keep going and shrink yourself down, you find yourself that you're just a big bag of atoms, essentially. It's organized so it looks like a body. But if you keep going further and further down, you find that at the bottom, the smallest elements are nothing but energy, with matter popping in and out of existence at a quantum in a quantum effect. And so one can conclude that we are essentially just conscious energy. It's our own consciousness that helps us to build our own, physical bodies through this actions of the quantum field. And this quantum field extends throughout the universe through a process of pairing with other elements and
quantum entanglement.
Entanglement, yes. Yeah. The idea is that we're all built of star material, right? And there have been many scientists that say that with every 7 years we've completely exchanged all the atoms.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah. Siri just won't let me go. she's quantum entangled with me.
Yeah, talk about synchronicity.
But anyway, the interesting thing about quantum entanglement, is that we are entangled by virtue of the fact that we're all star material in the beginning. We're quantum entangled with other parts of ourselves throughout the entire universe. And if you observe or change what happens to one of your particles, it will exactly at the same instant in time change what happens to the particle that you're entangled with. This is something that over and over again was actually proven in the lab to the point where it's really bizarre. It's called spooky action at a distance. And so by virtue of the fact that we're entangled with other parts of ourselves all over the universe since we all began as star material, as we change what happens within us, we change what happens in the physical universe.
Yeah.
And at a quantum level.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people, I've had discussions with people who study physics about this, and they say, well, this has been shown at the particle level, but it's, it's not, we haven't shown it on a larger scale than that.
Right.
Well, guess what? They're now showing that at larger and larger scales, they are showing the entangled effect, that it's not just individual particles, but now they're proving it at groups of particle levels. And eventually what they're going to find out is that the entire universe, because it was once a singularity, it was all one thing. Then it blew
entangled.
up into this, it was all entangled to begin with, and then it blew up into what we know as the universe. What it means is that the entire universe is a quantum field where everything in it interacts as if it's one body. So you, Bob Haas, as part of the body, can influence the entire field, and the field can be responsive to you. And since the quantum field is everything, then that means that it can all respond to you. And it's responding to your consciousness and the way that your emotions affect the entire field. The field then reflects that back to you. So when it has something that says that it's important to it, it has a way of being able to come back to you and reflect that back, that there's something very important here for you. We have had this, and before I want to share with you that we've had 3 other guests who have all described these sorts of synchronous effects. But what happened in each case is they were at a transcendent, transformative moment of their life. They had a decision to make, and then they had an experience either in a dream or in the physical world. Actually, in all cases, it was both, where they had things that happened in their dreams. Their physical world responded in a meaningful way to them, and it helped them during that moment of transformation to go down the path that was going to be for their wholeness and health and their growth. So something out there, Bob, wants us to be happy, healthy, and whole, which takes us back to Gestalt. Because what does Gestalt mean in German? Wholeness.
Wholeness,
right?
yes. Yeah,
and so when you practice Gestalt, what you're talking about is the wholeness of the person. And what we're getting into here is the wholeness of the universe. It's not just us individually, but we are part of this whole that is the entire universe. We are part of the wholeness that is it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Fritz Perls that who had developed or founded along with his wife Gestalt therapy is that his principle of Gestalt therapy was it's not just the whole personality or the whole ego. It extended to the environment. So his therapy always included the environment the individual is in. Not so much thinking in terms of the psychic environment, but the environment. And I think the principle that, if all this, when you boil it down, comes to is we are all one, unfortunately, or fortunately, we are all one, whether we like it or not, we are all one. And we can influence the cosmos by our very actions and thoughts. And I mean, we've heard spiritual leaders tell us this all, but now we're beginning to see the science that makes it happen. The experiment that really blew my mind, quantum physics experience and entanglement, is when they could see it by shooting photons through a double slit experiment, things like that. But what one group of scientists did was they splattered a whole bunch of particles, many of which were entangled, through a kind of like a prism. So they split the particles to go in 2 directions, and when they put these particles going in 2 directions through what's it called, Polaroid filters. So only the particles that were spinning in one direction could get through one Polaroid filter, and only the particles spinning in the other direction could get through the other. So you had these 2 particles, one spinning right, one spinning left, going through in two directions, but those particles were entangled. Then on the other ends, and it didn't matter what distance it was, I think they did this over a number of miles, that if you change the polarization on the particles on this end, all of a sudden the polarization instantaneously would change with the particles on the other end, and they could film it. They could see the particles hitting the film and the polarization changing as they switched it. And basically said that it didn't matter whether this was on the moon or some 100 million light years away. The same effect's going to occur instantaneously in time, with no time difference between the two.
Yeah.
So that's kind of goes to the group theory. It's we are a bag of particles and energy, basically. And so if you expand that experience to our personal bag of particles, you can see how what we do to ourselves can change what happens out there. I think the main takeaway from this whole experience is two things. One is we are all one. And there are many more experiences that one can share to show that is the case. But also that in terms of synchronicity and psi, our dreams don't stop when we stop dreaming. If we're going through when we wake up, if we're going through a major transition in our life, our unconscious will continue that dream into our waking life to kind of help continue direct us. Now, in this particular case, I ended up calling the publisher back and said, okay, I'm going to edit the book. So I don't think that was the real meaning of my dream. I think it wasn't just to get me to write the second book. It was essentially to get me not to give up on my visions, because they're not going to kill me. There's actually some sort of meaningfulness to them.
Wow. And so for our listeners, we hope that you will realize that when you are at these decision points, that you're not alone. There is a deeper wisdom that is available to you. You can turn to your dreams and engage with them, and you can do it in a DreamWork sort of way. You could use Gestalt. You could do it by, like you did during the lucid dream. You said, you realized you were in a dream, and you started engaging with the source that was behind the dream and said, well, what do I need to know right now? And then it gave you an experience to help you to work through it. And then
that's the true value of lucid dreaming, is to realize it's there and turn to it for help. And flying around is fun, but well,
and trust me, Bob, knowing from when I'm at Reddit and we talk about lucid dreaming, there are other things that people like to do in their lucid dreams too. Yes,
I know there are, but if you really want to change your life or get answers to your life, turn around to the wisdom. It's got to be an open-ended question. You can't ask the wisdom, what stock should I should I buy or sell? It's got to be meaningful to you, personally meaningful. That's why I had one case where a person did that. They said, how do I make it in the stock market? And the answer they got was, buy and sell stock. I am the Lord thy God. So if you want a meaningless answer, you can do it that way. But turn around to the dream and realize there's this grand cosmic wisdom there, and ask it to help you.
And it's not just when you're asleep when you can engage with it, because what you're saying is that this thing is also part of the world and everyone else. It's in the very structure and fabric of the universe, the world that we are in. It is part of it. So we want the listeners to walk away with that. And I think the phrase that keeps coming to mind for me is, you are not alone. And I think someone out there needs to hear that. Because they're probably struggling with something right now, that they need to know that they're not alone in their experience of life, and that the wisdom and the help is out there if they will engage with it. So, Bob Haas, thank you for joining me today, and we appreciate you sharing your experience and what you've learned from it, and the ways that you've gained and grown from it, and the way that your dreams have shaped you. So appreciate you coming on our podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being there.
Well, this concludes another episode of the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. Thank you so much to everybody out there that's listening. It really means a lot to us that you guys are here. And man, the numbers have been really picking up speed the last month or two, and it's super exciting. So if you've been sharing the word about this podcast, if you've been passing it out to the people you know, if you've been sharing it out, thank you. Seriously, thank you. We really need you guys' help to expand this bigger than our own personal reach. So any help that you can give us always is so appreciated from the bottom of our hearts, for real. Something that I've been wanting to say the last couple episodes is that if I could put out this call to action for any of you who listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It looks like our listenership on Apple is up to 40% of our listenership. And yet we have 0 comments or reviews on the podcast itself. And we're going on 2 years. So if you're listening via Apple, if I could just ask you to take a minute to please leave us a review, that would really help us out a lot. We have 26 episodes on there now and not a single review. So I just want to make sure if people find us that they're not like, wow, they have all these episodes, but nobody has anything to say about it. It may make or break a person's decision to listen to the podcast. So if you love this podcast, it would mean the world to us if you could leave a review or a rating. I know a lot of these podcast platforms don't seem to have a review system for some reason, but it really does help. And it would mean a lot to us to be able to read what you think about this. So thank you in advance. And thank you so much for your dedication, for showing up here every time we release something. There is a lot of you that I don't even have to post it on social media. You're just already there listening, and that is so exciting to see that you all care deeply about this, just as we care about this. So thank you. Seriously, thank you to the moon and back. I mean that with all my heart. But yeah, so big shout out to Jason. If you want more information on Jason, please go and check out his website, jmdebord.com. That's jmdebord.com for all of his incredible offerings, his classes, his books, all of that. Please go check it out. If you want more information on me, please check out AQ the Dreamwalker on any streaming platform to check out my music that is inspired by dreams. If you want to connect with us on Instagram, please go to @DreamsThatShapeUs. That's where you can connect with us. You know, this can be more of a two-way street versus us just not knowing any of you. So if that appeals to you and you're on Instagram and you follow and you love this podcast, please come find us. Please interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. And a big shout out to Bob Haas. Really appreciate your story and sharing it. And man, it really just blows my mind. It really is one of the coolest stories that I've ever heard. Thank you. And if you want more information on Bob, please go to his website, which is www.dreamscience.org. And you can find out all kinds of information on what he's got going on. That link will be in the show notes. I love all of you out there. And nighty night! And I did say that I was going to offer a sneak peek at Leah's new fiction podcast called Innis Forgettance. I've been listening to it and I really, really, really am enjoying it. It's very beautifully done. She has all kinds of cool sound design stuff going on. Her writing is gorgeous and masterful. And I really hope that you enjoy it and check it out. Here's a sneak peek. You can find it on all of the streaming platforms that you listen to podcasts on. Check it out. It's called Innis Forgettance. And this is by Leah Noel. She was on episode 7 with the Amazon and the stories inside of us. If you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and check it out, and check out her fiction podcast. Thank you.
The Innis Forgettance is a folk fantasy podcast set in an alternate Appalachia and faraway Celtic fort. You can help support me and this story by sharing it with your friends, posting on social media, or by clicking the link in the description to buy me a coffee. I'm glad you joined me this week, and stay safe out there in the woods.
When the blinds reveal their secrets by the lantern's fading gleam, conjure all the light within you, for to fades then never see.
Well, hi there. You must be new in town. Inniscombe's a tiny mountain village. Won't take you long to find your way around. Come on down to the corn shucking later on. Someone's sure to let you hitch a ride in their wagon. But you better steer clear of Porter Hollis. And the woods. Especially the woods. According to rumor, 17-year-old Porter Hollis is to blame for his mama's crying sickness. You see, he's been bewitched by the never-seen, spirits haunting the forest who possess townsfolk's bodies and steal their souls. No one knows how or why the never-seen afflict this town. And don't you ask, don't you dare ask. Folk get all up in arms when someone starts sniffing around, asking about the past. Anyway, where was I? Oh, hope you'll stay a while. You might be new, but folk will warm up to you soon enough. It's getting dark now. Find some place to stay the night before the never-seen float down from the mountains looking for a soul like you. Written and narrated by me, Leah Noel, with special appearance by David Walker. The Innis Forgettance is a fiction podcast that straddles timelines set in an alternate Appalachia and faraway Celtic fort. Travel with Porter Hollis as he sets on a journey to untangle the lies of the past and a spell woven of darkness and fear. Will he bring about Inniscombe's deliverance or its end?